Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to connect an application to a database, and we're going to use our application to extract data and to add data to the database. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a table that we're going to be interacting with. So let's right click on tables, new table. We're going to add a few columns. The first one, ID, is going to be of type int, not nullable. The next column is called name, type varchar, also not nullable. And the last one is price, also of type int. Okay, now let's call this table items. Items. And we're going to make an identity column on ID. We're going to set ID as the primary key. Okay, so then Control S to save and create the table. Next, we're going to launch Visual Studio and we're going to create a console application using the .NET framework. Select console app. Next. And we can just name this anything. I'm going to name it connecting to DB. You want to make sure that this is checked. Create. Give it a few seconds. And there you go. We have our template for our console application. All right, so now we're going to create our model for the item. We're going to create a class called item. Let's make this public. And our item class is going to have three properties. The first one is the ID of type int. Second property is string name. And the third property is of int as well, and it's the price. We're going to add two constructors to this. The first is our default constructor. And then our parameterized constructor takes in two parameters, the name and the price. Alright, so now that we have our item model created, let's go back to program.cs, and right above main is where we're going to add our connection string, and we're going to put the connection string in a variable called connection string. It's going to be public constant of type string called connection string, and the connection string is as follows. So data source, the data source is essentially the name of the SQL server that's on your machine. In my case, it's localDB / MSSQL localDB. I have to add one more backslash. Okay. The next piece of information is the name of the database. Initial catalog equals test. And then the type of security, integrated security, equals SSPI. All right, so now that we have our connection string, let's begin writing our write to DB function. Right underneath main, we're gonna put our function. It's gonna be a private function, static void. I'm gonna call it write to DB. We're gonna pass in an item. And let's begin by typing up the SQL command that we're going to be running on the database. Insert into items. We're going to be adding a name and a price, and the values are going to be coming from two parameters. One called name and one called price. All right. Next, we want to create our SQL connection object. This is going to essentially allow us to connect to the database. SQL connection, we're going to name it con equals new SQL connection. We're going to be passing in one thing, which is the connection string, which we have up here. And let's just type connection string. All right. Next, we want to open the connection, so con.open. All right. Next, we want to create a SQL command object. This object essentially allows us to run commands on the database. SQL command, call this command, or CMD, new SQL command. We're going to pass in 2 items. We're going to be passing in the SQL statement and the connection. All right. Finally, we need to pass in the data that's going to go into the 2 parameters that we have in our SQL statement. For that, we're going to be using the SQL command object. We're going to type cmd.parameters.add. First, we need to put the name of which parameter we're going to be passing data to. First one is name. We need to indicate what type of parameter this is. For that, we use SQL db type dot, and we're going to be selecting varchar size 50, and we're going to set the value equals to the item that we passed in to this method, and the property is name. All right, the second parameter is price. We got the @ sign. You indicate what type. It is of type int, and we set the value equal to item.price. And I'll just be misspelling. All right, now we execute our statement. Again, by using the SQL command object, we type cmd.execute non-query, and finally we close the connection. Now that we have created our write to DB function, it's time to test it out. So let's go back into main. Let's create a list of items. List item, new items, new list item, parentheses, and we're gonna add a new item. Let's call it coffee, and the price is $5. Another item, green tea, $14. Item, some horchata, right? All right, let's do that. Let's make that $9. All right. Next, let's create a loop that will go over every single item and pass it to the writeDB function. Let's type for each var I in new items. This essentially says for every item in new items. And let's call the write to DB and pass every single item in there. All right, let's save that. Go up to debug, start without debugging. All right, I think I misspelled something. Right there, missed the I. All right, cool. Let's run it again. All right, let's go to our database and let's select all the items from the database. And there you go. All right, now that we tested our write to DB function, let's create our read from DB function. And let's begin by commenting out this part. And let's scroll down right below the write to DB function. Let's create a function, private static void, and let's call it read from DB. We're not going to be passing anything in. So let's begin. Let's create a list of type item that's going to store all the items that we retrieve from the database. All right. Next is our SQL statement. We're just going to select star from items. We're just going to grab all the records in this table. Next, we're going to create our SQL connection, same as before. SQL connection on equals new SQL connection. We're going to pass in connection string. All right. We're going to open the connection. We're going to create our SQL command object. We're going to pass the SQL statement and the connection. One other thing that we're going to add is the SQL data reader. So once the command object executes this method, it essentially returns all the records and stores them in this variable right here. And we have to iterate or go through every single record. So reader.read. So let's create an item, new item. So we're gonna set the ID. We're gonna type reader.getInt32 since the ID is of type int, and the ID is in the first column. Next is the name. Again, reader. Since the name is of type string, we're just type getString. And since the name is in the second column, we do 1. And finally the price, reader get int 32, and it's the third column. All right. And we're gonna add this new item to our list. And finally, we're gonna return all the items .add. All right. I messed up. It's not of type void. It's of type list item. Cool. All right. Now we're gonna test our read from DB function. Since we're returning a list, we're gonna go over the items that are returned. So var I in read from DB. So we're calling the method here, and it's returning a list, so we can go over every single item, and we're gonna print that out to the console. Let's do a $, quotes, and let's just show the name. Base, oh, not item, it's I, all right. And then I.price, semicolon. Let's run that. Something was out of bounds. ID name 01. Oh, right here, 2. Let's run it again. And there you go. We can format this by going over to the price and adding a semicolon and then a C to format this as currency. And then now when we run it again, we're gonna get our $. So there you go. That's how you connect your application to a database.